Cinema. That's where we're at. You get an Atlas, you get a Furiosa, and you get a Madam Web.
Yeah.
This is what we get to choose from.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm choosing, personally.
Yeah. Madam Web, right? Yeah.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Asian Blokes Podcast, a podcast where we talk about Asian pop culture, films, TV shows, comic books, anime, music, food, video games, whatever we're feeling at the time, really. My name is Dan with a H, and with me as always is my co-host, Tavi. Hi, Tavi.
Hey, Dan. What's up?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I feel like driving really fast, down the roads, putting the pedal to the metal.
Down the roads of suburban to rural Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, part of my area is kind of semi-rural.
Yeah, it's not hard to get to.
Roads.
It's not hard to get to these kinds of areas. If you live in Australia, I feel like
that's true. Actually, yeah.
Just drive around the corner from fucking Water Gardens, and you're probably in Mad Max territory already.
Well, I feel like Australia is turning more into the sadness rather than Mad Max.
Oh yeah,
because with all the amounts of that kind of violence starting up,
going on.
Yeah,
let's not get into it. But we are going to talk about Furiosa, among other things. We've got Japanese Film Festival news. We have Ubisoft Assassin's Creed news, as well as mini reviews for Atlas and Fallout TV series before we get to the main review, which is going to be Furiosa, as mentioned. I'll put time codes in as usual if you want to skip around. So Japanese Film Festival, Tavi. The Japanese Film Festival Online 2024.
Yeah, so this is an online festival. We sort of covered this a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was when I had I had COVID when I was watching those movies, so they were probably not the best circumstance of me reviewing stuff.
Yeah, I haven't listened back to that episode for a while, but yeah, it's probably a bit feverish. In general.
Yeah, but a lot of these are kind of like slightly older, like a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Some of which I've seen. This one played in the theater last year. We Made a Beautiful Bouquet.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of like a typical like Japanese romance, kind of light romance film. Mm-hmm. It's got Kasumi Arimura in it. She's pretty popular. You might know her from Chihiro-san or Call Me Chihiro. Yeah, it's a good movie. Maybe a little bit too light for my tastes. It's the kind of the realistic view of like love and breakup, but maybe in my eyes doesn't really like commit too much to it. But it's a pretty enjoyable light watch, and especially for you and I living in the mid 2010s.
Oh, in Japan, you mean?
Yeah, in Japan.
Okay, yeah.
There's a lot of references to certain pop culture music and things that were happening, or that I noticed that are referenced in that movie. So I give it a watch. Yeah, no, it's good. Check it out. Maybe it's one to watch with your partner as well.
Yep.
It's a pretty easy watch. Nothing offensive.
I'm up for anything Kasumi Aramura based.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. There's Baby
Assassins, of course. Yes, which we have covered pretty recently, actually.
Yeah. That's a pretty hard movie to get a view on. So now's a chance to watch it for free online, legally.
If you're a fan of action comedy, this is a good offering. I think it's a pretty unique offering as well. You don't really see many movies that are like this. I think it's got just enough action to satisfy people that are kind of fans of like that John Wickian style of action. But it is definitely more on the quirky side of things.
Yeah. It's not for everyone. Not everyone is gonna like it. It's a weird movie, but there's just a lot of heart to it, and a lot of fun performances in that movie.
Yeah, and the bonus, if you do watch it, is that you can go and listen to our episode on it as well, so you get double the enjoyment. Well, maybe
half, because they don't have the second one.
1.5 the enjoyment, and that's probably pretty generous. But yeah, anything else that catches your eye?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the others. I've read the novel of Anime Supremacy. That kind of looks like it's kind of another light watch as well. I think the novel's told in like 3 stories, but I think in the movie it seems like they focus on 1.
Okay.
What I'm actually most looking forward to is this Japan horror film competition that they got showing.
Oh, yeah?
Seems interesting. You and I have always been big fans of J-horror. So this is just like, I think it's 4 short films. So altogether it's about an hour of viewing. So I don't know anything about these directors, but just looking from the posters, they look like quite fun. They're like classic J-horror mood, I suppose. Yeah, so yeah, I guess we will probably review this one, I reckon, when we actually get to watch that, because I'll be coming down to Sydney at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm looking forward to watching I Am What I Am because I like Toko Miura, that actress from Drive My Car.
I think the beauty of this kind of festival where it is online, it does give you access to a lot of movies that you maybe would not go to the movies for or pay money for, I guess. You know, like I think it's just a good exposure to Japanese cinema and what Japanese cinema has to offer, right? Like there were a few, even 2 years ago, there were a couple of movies that we did watch that maybe are not the typical kind of movies that I would go out to watch. But when I did watch them, you know, I enjoyed them. Some more than others, obviously. But, you know, the big surprise that year was, what's the Shamison made one that we really liked?
Yeah, Ito. Yeah, that's a really good movie.
That was a really good movie that I might have not seen, you know, if it wasn't for this festival. So
yeah, it's true. I probably would not have caught my eye either. Even though I do have a comment about not going to the cinema, which I'll probably talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we talk about Furiosa. Yeah, but you know what I mean, though. Like,
yeah. No, I think in this case, yeah, it's a good exposure for these kind of movies, especially for these. Because, yeah, you know, Japanese cinema is not that big here in Australia. So it's nice to see that there is, you know, a platform for these movies to be watched and appreciated.
Yeah.
I mean, I say it's not that big, but it's definitely as big as, say, like, you know, South Korean cinema or, you know, Taiwanese cinema, Chinese cinema here. I think out of all the Asian countries, though, like, I think Indian cinema is the biggest here. Like, by a long way.
They're probably the ones that get the most play in cinemas.
Yeah, I always see them, like, we haven't watched one for a little while, but I always see them advertised on, like, Hoints and Village. So there's definitely, like, a large audience for them. And probably the odd, like, Korean, South Korean, and, like, Hong Kong movies, some action movies. But, yeah, I think India is probably the biggest one, yeah.
But definitely, if you're a fan of Japanese cinema, maybe check out this film festival. It goes from June 5th to June 19th. If you are interested, you can visit JapaneseFilmFestival.net, and hopefully that leads you to somewhere where you can watch good movies.
And it's free.
It's free.
So you got no excuse.
Why not?
Yeah, it's free.
It's free. You don't even have to leave the house. You really have no excuse on this one, guys. Check it out.
Unless you hate Japanese people, which will move on to our story, which is the Ubisoft, game, the new Ubisoft Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I did see a bit about this, but I think you know more about it than I do. My understanding is that there's a black samurai character in it that people are getting angry about. Is that the gist of it?
That's basically the TLDR, is that there's like a reveal. It's kind of funny, the reveal, because it's quite like trolling, because you don't see like the reveal, because it's supposed to be Yasuke, who's kind of like, in a historic sense, like a pretty, I mean, maybe the only recorded instance of a black samurai. And I don't know much about the history of Yasuke, but I've seen people's discussion of it, you know, saying, oh, he's not actually a samurai. He was just what's the term?
A dude that carried around a sword.
Yeah, he was like with, I think like Nobunaga, like fucked with him. Yeah. But it's quite like trolling in a sense that, like, when he reveals his face, he's like, you think you're gonna play a Japanese guy?
Okay, so is that what people are upset about? Is it the fact that this is the first time that Assassin's Creed has gone into Japan, and then you're playing like a Westerner, essentially?
It's not the first time an Assassin's Creed game has gone to Asia. I think there's one of the the spin-off like 3DS games or something that went to China. Sure. Of course, because, you know, Asians don't really matter. So, yeah, they're just the regulated,
just chuck them on the 3DS.
Chuck them on
a thing that nobody has anymore.
Yeah. They did Egypt first. They did Greece first. But it's like, no one wants to play as an Asian. And it's like...
Where's Assassin's Creed Australia, Tavi? I'm still waiting on that one.
Are you going to be like a bushranger?
I want to meet Ned Kelly. That's what I want to do.
It'd probably just be like a Mad Max.
He'd be like the head of like a secret league of assassins that are just a group of bad blokes that rob banks.
They're just like on a lot of drugs.
Yeah, just a bunch of larrikins, you know?
Yeah. But one half of the controversy is the character of Yasuke, and the second half is Ubisoft's pricing scheme, which I won't go into too much detail, but they're basically quite insidious, and people are sort of saying, that making a controversial character is kind of smoke screening the pricing, because basically the standard game is $70 US, but if you want everything, you have to pay for the Ultimate Edition, which is like $120 US.
Okay.
And it's like, what the fuck? But what Ubisoft really wants you to do is pay for their monthly subscription, which is like $17 US.
Okay.
So they've kind of marked up the price just so it will push people onto their service, their streaming service. So that's what, like, that's probably 50% of
just
what
for
people are
context,
pissed
like,
off about.
what do you get for the $70 version?
You get the game. That's it.
Okay.
But with the Ultimate version, you get like the typical DLC shit. You get like a season pass. You get extra costumes, and then they've basically like locked some missions out that you can't play in the standard edition.
Right. Okay.
So you have to pay for the Ultimate Edition, and it's like already there in the game, but they've just like blocked it behind a paywall.
Yeah. But this doesn't sound like something new. You know, maybe it's new to
It's
Ubisoft,
not new, but that's no, that's the point though.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of companies have kind of, I guess, evolved into this payment method, and now it's like the greed is starting to show a bit more.
Yeah.
So it's like gamers are a little bit fed up, but AAA gaming has suffered a little bit. But we won't get too much into that, even though we do talk about games.
I mean,
sometimes.
It's not just gaming, but every industry has suffered, and we'll probably talk about that when we talk about Furiosa as well. But I don't know if that's an excuse for this kind of behavior, right? And I mean, like, I don't think people will put up with it for that long. I honestly thought this kind of thing was on the way out because of the way like recent EA games have been received.
I think like big companies like tripling down. They're just you guys just don't know what you want, so we're gonna make more of this stuff.
Right.
But it's basically the rise of kind of like AA or indie studios, like Helldivers is really popular, but even that got caught under the corporate eye when with the Sony controversy, but that got walked back. But Yasuke. So there's been some mixed opinions about making this the main character. And I can kind of see both sides, whereas part of me doesn't really care that much because I don't play the Assassin's Creed games anyway, so it doesn't bother me. And this character, this is not the first time this character has been...
Isn't there a Netflix
in
show
the media?
Yasuke?
It's Yasuke, It's based off, it's like Flying Lotus's anime.
Yeah, okay.
And that was, I think that was, had a mixed reception amongst critics, but I think people generally liked it. But I think the difference is authenticity, I suppose, because the anime was made by Flying Lotus and has that heavy kind of Thundercat Flying Lotus feel to it. There's a lot of like hip hop. There's a lot of
you know, you're really
even like
targeting that demographic of black anime lovers.
Yeah, and I mean, even we've had like black entertainers embrace like Asian culture in general, and it's created great things. I mean, like we have Afro Samurai. Yeah, fucking Wu-Tang Clan, man. It's one of the greatest one of the greatest cultural appropriations of all time. I love that shit, man. They created one of the best hip hop albums ever made.
It's good. There's a bunch of YouTube content creators.
Yeah, there's a lot of like black YouTube creators that really love anime. They're really funny.
Yeah, they're funny.
Yeah,
I like them.
Yeah. So it's like I can see that kind of representation, I guess, being quite enjoyed by this community. But then the other part of it is that this is most definitely a PR move for the DEI module.
Okay.
And it just feels very like disingenuous, especially coming from a big company and coming from like a bunch of white writers, you know?
Okay.
And it's like, I mean, Asian men already have a hard time being seen as it is. So this is like another, it's just another thing. It's like, oh, you know, I mean, like we don't need another white lead. But it's like, well, the guy, it's in Japan. It's like, nah, change it. Let's just change it. You know?
I get it.
Yeah. So in that sense, it kind of annoys me that it is literally like, they don't care about this actual character at all. It is definitely just, it's virtue signaling, which annoys me as well. So
I mean, I don't mind the idea of setting this game around this character, because you do want your main character to stand out.
Well, there's two characters.
Way, right?
There's Yasuke, and I think there's a female ninja kind of character who actually seems to be more of the protagonist.
Okay.
But I think you can play as both. I mean, that's what I'm led to believe.
But people are only angry about Yasuke.
Yeah, but
probably a certain group of people are probably angry about the female lead as well.
Yeah, they're not really. I mean, there's already been a lot of like Asian samurai games already.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
you got stuff to play. Yeah. If you want an Asian lead in a video game, I think you've got a few games to choose from.
I mean, people brought up the argument of, do you know the game Neo?
Yes, I do, actually.
Yeah, it's the Koei Tecmo game. It's basically Samurai Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So in the first one, you play as like an Irish guy. So a lot of people were kind of like, why weren't you guys mad about that one? Okay. I think the difference is that one was a Japanese company made that game. And it was written by like Japanese writers. And so it is their own culture. So they're kind of allowed to tell it from that perspective. It feels more genuine. Whereas in this one, I don't know. Like, regardless, to be honest, even if it was an Asian male, I was still not going to play it either way.
Those games suck. If I want to learn about history, I would read a book rather than play Assassin's Creed.
Just go watch Shogun instead. It's better. Yeah.
Some people like Assassin's Creed. I'm sure they're fine.
I mean, they make one every year, but I think it's because Assassin's Creed fans have always wanted a Japanese-centric Assassin's Creed, because that would just be cool.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And there's just a lot of like really badass like samurai warriors back in, you know, feudal Japan back in the day. But it's like, it's kind of.
If you think about the history that you would most like to play through as a video game, Japan would be up there.
Yeah, exactly.
And Irish pirates would be pretty far down, I would say.
Yeah, it's true. But I guess people wanted to play as like a cool, like Japanese guy in a samurai game, and then Ubisoft kind of just like denied them. I mean, I think if they had made it like a DLC where there was Yasuke, I think it would have been like much more well received. But it's probably just like overcorrection. I think you're trying to be too diverse where it's pandering, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you think the fact that this is based on a historical figure helps? Because if it was just a fabricated character, then that's not as cool.
I think they're kind of using that as a smokescreen, because there's not really that much known about Yasuke. Like, I did a little bit of a
maybe he wasn't even black.
Well, he was brought over as a slave, I guess, by the Portuguese. Of course, it was the Portuguese. But then
dogs,
it was
absolute dogs.
Yeah. But then I think somehow he became like a retainer to Oda Nobunaga. But there's never been like a picture drawn of him and stuff. And so I don't know. Like I think the fact that not much is known about him is that you can kind of really do anything with him. I mean, I haven't played the game. I'm not going to play the game, and I guess we'll see what the reception is when it's out. I think it'll just be mid either way because it's an Assassin's Creed
Assassin's
game.
Creed games tend to be pretty mid, right? Like nobody.
Yeah.
I know they have a fan base, but nobody's like going crazy over them. And because they produce so many as well, it's kind of like washes over you at a point.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like corporate pandering. So
fair enough.
I disagree with the idea overall, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I think if it's done with good intention and like a genuine like, rather than a bunch of guys sitting in a boardroom and saying, well, Asian guys don't really sell, so why don't you make them black? That's cool, right? Yeah. Kids love mumble rap, so like, To be
fair though, if you talk to the average Japanese gamer about this, they'd probably be pretty buzzed about like playing as a black samurai, I reckon.
Yeah, well, there's some. I think some people have like picked some comments and they're like, nah, they don't like it. I think,
right.
But that could also be like cherry picking as well because people love dunking on big companies, me included. So yeah,
it's an easy
way.
target. These corporations. Yeah. And they're usually fucking up, so it makes for good content. On the subject of video games / TV shows, how about I talk about Fallout for a bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, don't spoil it because I actually want to watch it.
Yeah, no spoilers. No spoilers in this review. I'll just say that I really liked it. I think it's definitely one of the best video game adaptations that I've seen. Period. They really nail the aesthetic and the tone. I think it's suitably quirky, especially like the vault dwelling stuff. I really enjoyed all the stuff to do with vaults. The stuff in the Wasteland is pretty good as well. Like the look of everything is quite good. All the performances are really good. My only thing about this show is that because I really like the Fallout series of games, right?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Like I played Fallout 4 so many times. I think I've still... it's your copy of Fallout 4 actually, Tommy.
Yeah, I just gave it to you. It's like, just give it, man. I'm not going to play it. But it's I remember I hung out with you in Japan and you showed me like this town that you had built.
Yeah, I'd spent all day building this settlement. You come home, I'm still in my undies. I'm like, Tommy, look what I've created. Yeah, no, it's good. And before that, Fallout New Vegas, very good game as well. Like I tried to get into the older ones as well, but it was kind of like I got into them after the fact, so they always felt a bit dated to me.
Yeah.
Like even Fallout 3, I haven't really played that much. I wouldn't say that I'm a huge lore aficionado. Like I don't really dive that deeply into like the mechanics of the world and how everything came to be this way. To me, like I like it because it is quite mysterious. Like all of the vault stuff is very mysterious, so you don't really know what you're going into whenever you're exploring a vault for the first time. Like you don't really know how the world went to shit. Like there are hints towards it here and there, and I'm sure people that have studied the Fallout games know a lot about the lore because it is there in like the computer terminals and stuff that you can open up. And if you want to fucking read in a video game, there's definitely a lot of lore in there for you. But I've never been that kind of player. So
yeah, I'd say the same as well. I try to sometimes, but then as part of like I just want to play the game.
I find it interesting, but I do also like the mystery of it. So I think like my main like criticism about the TV show is that it does dive quite deeply into the lore and reveals stuff about like how the world did go to shit, which to me was a little bit dissatisfying. I feel like I preferred the mystery, which I might actually talk about in our Furiosa review as well. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe this is just unique to me because people really like this show in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say like really, really good show, really great looking show. And it does a lot of things right. But yeah, maybe it answers some questions that I didn't really want answered.
Yeah. Well, you know, like a general audience likes having answered questions in their shows.
True.
They like to understand everything. So this might be unique to you and maybe unique to me because we kind of like to make things up for ourselves or to leave things unanswered. But that's just a difference in taste. But yeah, I've only really heard like positive things about this show, except that like subsect of YouTube that just like hates women. So, which I'll probably talk a little bit about in a Furiosa review.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm like looking forward to watching it. Yeah, I've just been watching a bunch of other shows for this podcast. So, you know, yeah, I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
And I've been just busy amongst other things. But no, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm glad that there is a show that is really taking the time and care, that it's like been pretty positively received. And I even watched that trailer as well. And I feel like, this actually looks pretty good. It doesn't look... it doesn't look shit. It looks quite...
It captures the essence of the video games.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say, which is very important, I think, for a video game adaptation.
It kind of covers that like wasteland look pretty well.
Just like how Paul W.S. Anderson's Monster Hunter captured the essence of those video games, I feel like the Fallout TV show really nails it on this one. Yeah.
Don't even get me started on that. Fucking the tone.
No, but I think you'll like Fallout.
Yeah,
pretty
definitely.
Easy to get through as well.
Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to.
And it's canon as well, so you know if you want to.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah.
If you want to keep in line with what's going on in the Fallout world, it's must-watch television.
Well, I'm not a big lore aficionado as well, but I do appreciate it, like when they take the time and care, because most products these days based on existing IPs is just like, oh yeah, don't actually play the game or watch, just like you're just going to do whatever.
I mean, these days, I feel like this has been going on since the 80s to 90s, Tubby. Street Fighter, 1994, nothing to do with the video games. Super Mario Brothers, Tubby, nothing to do with the video games. I think he jumps once in that movie, Bob Hoskins.
Oh really? Yeah. I don't remember even what happens in that movie.
Dennis Hopper is some kind of lizard man.
He's Bowser, isn't he?
He's King Koopa. I don't think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's weird.
I remember, I mean, just off topic slightly, I remember seeing the box as a kid, and even then, I remember like seeing Dennis Hopper as like the villain in like the cover art. I mean, in the like little thumbnail on the blurb. I'm like, this looks fucking weird. Like, even as a kid, I'm just like, I don't know if I would
And when you're a
watch
kid,
this.
everything based on a video game looks good. So like, for us to recognize from the box that maybe this movie is not very good, must have been pretty fucking terrible.
Yeah. Speaking of terrible movies, well, actually, I want to give a quick shout out to another movie that I watched, an indie movie called Fremont. It's basically about an Afghan refugee or ex-translator who's had to move to America since the evacuation of Afghanistan, and it's just kind of her life in America, and it's a very kind of underplayed, minimalist. Kind of a comedy, but not really. It's very kind of dry. But yeah, no, it was just a really nice movie. And it was really refreshing to see like a film about Afghans that isn't just someone who has lost their whole family in a bombing and just crying over the corpse of their children. Because like that's usually
that's the narrative, right?
The preconception that it's just war. So it was really refreshing to see just like them being people, and like she has conflict as well because she's kind of like branded as a traitor amongst like the community that she lives within. But yeah, so it's kind of like the mediation like on loneliness, but it's not a really heavy movie either. And there's quite a few like Asian characters in there that are like quite nice as well. I think the only unlikable character is this one Asian woman who just doesn't like the main character. But yeah, no, I think it was a really really nice movie. I'd go check it out.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, back to the terrible wagon. I watched Netflix's Atlas, and yeah, shit.
So this is the movie starring J-Lo.
It's basically, you know the game Titanfall, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's basically J-Lo's Titanfall, but made shitter. And it's every AI sci-fi like cliche. It's like, oh, AI is like the enemy, but like also you gotta like learn to embrace AI and what is life? And yeah, it's a premise that I like, but it's executed in such a fucking mediocre, mundane way. And the thing is, there's nothing that is overtly really bad about this movie, except say the script and the plot. But
okay,
like
so two pretty big elements of any film.
Yeah, but like, look, I saw the trailer for this. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna watch this because it looks like there's some cool action in it. And there is some cool action in it, you know? And J-Lo, she does fine. She's not bad in it. Simu Liu is in it, and I might cop some slack for this, but he sucks as the villain.
Yeah, okay.
He's just very...
he's a villain. Oh, okay.
He's a villain. Yeah, and people didn't even know, but he's the villain.
Yeah, okay.
He's just very unintimidating.
Sure.
And yeah, it's like on the same vein as like Red Notice, you know? It is just
okay. That's
this
bad.
It's bad. Like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this movie is not that bad. There's some pretty bad dialogue in it. Like there's the typical captain guy or whoever is like, no, we can't have her on the team. She's unreliable. She's emotional. But then the other guy, but she's the best damn whatever, kind of thing that we got. So there's that typical scene, but it doesn't play enough into the cheese of that. Because I'm going to reference The Beekeeper again. There's a lot of really silly dialogue in that movie, but it is done in such a like sincere manner and a manner where it's like, yeah, you're just here to watch Statham kick ass. That like it works.
So it knows what
because
it
it's
is.
Like cheese. Yeah.
Beekeeper.
I don't think this movie knows who it's like targeting because this is a movie that is going to be geared towards like guys, right? This is a sci-fi action with a lot of shit blowing up. But then you have J-Lo, who has this kind of bonding session with this AI mech suit that only comes up like 30 minutes into the movie. And the story is just really boring.
Okay.
There's a pretty cool action scene at the end of the movie, but I was just doing something else. I was like cooking lunch.
Yeah.
It is that kind of movie. It's background noise movie.
That's Netflix specialty, Tug.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. I mean, yeah, maybe it's the kind of death of cinema movie. It's the kind of movie where I know people will have watched it and be like, oh yeah, that's not bad. And it's kind of like, it's slop, really.
Yeah.
Like when I first watched it, I'm like, yeah, it's not great, but it is what it is. But then the more I think about it, it's like, this movie, like, actually fucking sucks.
If this movie came out, like, back before streaming, would it have been a direct-to-video? Or would it have been a theatrical
no, it's got
release?
it looks like it has a pretty decent budget.
Okay.
It's because they could just chuck J-Lo in, like, a room behind a green screen and then just let the CGI artists do it. And, like, I think everything is just average. Like, it looks fine. There's nothing that is excruciatingly bad about it. Not like Simulant, which they wish they had a bigger budget.
Offering, yes.
Simu Liu sci-fi, which actually has a better premise and a better message, but executed way worse than what Atlas was. I reckon if the movie was just mechs fighting mechs and mechs destroying shit, yeah. Just do that. I don't need any of this other philosophical stuff, which I'd get in much better films, like Alex Garland stuff. So just be an action movie. Yeah. I will have to say, though, there is some pretty, like, graphic scenes that I did not expect in that movie.
Like violence?
Yeah, I was really surprised. It's not super graphic. There's this one scene where, like, this captain guy gets captured by, like, Simu Liu. And they're kind of like holding his eye open, like Clockwork Orange style. And they're about to put like a drill into his eye to get like information from his brain.
Yeah.
And you don't actually see it go through. It's all implied. But just watching like his eye being like wretched open and his eyes kind of like red and veiny as well. Like I was actually quite surprised by that. It's like, oh, okay, that's not bad, Atlas. You kind of, I mean, it's more violence than what you saw in Shang-Chi. So I was like, yeah, that was okay. That was the scene that probably impressed me the most.
Did it make you fear Simu Liu as a character?
No, not really. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this off air. How I'm not sure if Simu Liu is a great action star. I mean, he could do stunts well, but he doesn't really have that much charisma. But his comedy acting chops are actually pretty good, and that probably comes from what's that, Kim's Convenience and Barbie. So he does that well. I'll give it to him. But
I liked him in Barbie.
I don't know. I don't buy him as a hero or a villain. But normally he's quite an expressive guy. He's a very loud dude. He knows how to make a good impression in person. So he's really good at that. But I don't know. I just can't really see it translated that well in this role.
And the only thing I've seen about this movie is a press conference, a promotion for this movie, where it's J-Lo and Simu Liu being interviewed, and someone brings up Ben Affleck, and then Simu Liu jumps to J-Lo's defense. He's like, no, we're not doing that. Get out of here with those kinds of questions. And then he talks about starts talking about representation for some reason. Okay, it's pretty on brand for Simu Liu, but it didn't really have anything to do with the situation.
He's a little bit of a representation whore, I think.
It's an important topic, Tavi.
Yeah, I don't know. Just that's not the only thing you should be worried about. Representation is important, but
maybe just make a good movie. Maybe focus on that.
I mean, he has. He didn't make it, but he was in Barbie, but he was a side character. That's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
I mean, half of Shang-Chi is good. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Simu Liu. You
You're right, Simu Liu. Yeah.
Everyone's going to have a cause.
There's really not much more to say about Atlas, except you can give it a miss. So if you're doing laundry and you want some noise,
if you've run out of Rebel Moon movies to watch, maybe put this on.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about a pretty good movie then, Tavi. Furiosa, Mad Max Saga.
Yeah, another female-led action film. Yeah, but this one is much better. Yeah. So this is, I think there's one Asian guy in this movie, but this is another kind of us talking about Australian movies.
Yes.
Because did you know there was actually a time when Australia was at the forefront of cinema? Did you know that, Dan? We were actually quite innovative.
Aren't we still at the forefront though, Tavi? Wouldn't you say that MAFS is one of the most watched TV shows on TV?
MAFS, Travel Guides.
Yep.
MasterChef, which I am not watching this year because I kind of got sick of that show.
SAS, whatever that is.
SAS Australia.
Yeah.
Elvis, which is actually not a bad movie, but it's just an Australian film that's not about an Australian figure.
Is that an Australian film? I mean, it's hard.
I think the production.
We did talk about Late Night with the Devil recently, which was a good film. So we do have to cut Australia some slack, and there have been decent films shot in Australia recently. I think people like Anyone But You.
Oh, so was that shot in Sydney? I've heard that movie is all right. That's like the rom-com, with Glenn Powell.
That's right.
I might actually give it a watch, even though it's not my cup of tea. I've heard that it's one of the better ones. So I'm curious to hear when that kind of movie.
It's also got Furiosa's mum in it, so
Oh yeah,
there's that.
Is she the actress that plays Furiosa's mum?
Yeah, Charlie Fraser is in Anyone But You. Also, The Fall Guy came out recently. People think it's pretty mid, but shot in Australia.
There you go. Well, that's probably the recipe for making a bomb then, is shoot your movie in Australia. But before we get onto that topic...
that's why we're covering it, because this is an Australian film. And we see that from the start of the film, because they do a big old zoom in into Central Australia, which definitively, I think maybe for the first time, definitively sets a Mad Max film in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's pretty clear from the accents and stuff, and from the scenery that, it is probably Australia. I don't think the movies have ever outright said that this is Australia.
Yeah, because I think they wanted to have that international appeal, and whenever it's something to do with Australia, like it kind of lowers the quality.
That's right.
Of the
That's why there
movie
was that terrible
yeah.
American dub version of the original Mad Max film.
Yeah, I haven't seen that version, but I know that there wasn't they dubbed the voices. It's like, come on, guys, it's not that hard to
Just
understand.
be proud of the Australian accent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about this film non-spoilers first, and we'll drop a spoiler warning before we do full spoilers. But yes, Furiosa.
It's basically just the origin story of Furiosa, right?
Yeah, this is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. Yes, centered around the character of Furiosa, and just tells the story about how she went from a little girl growing up in the green place to the badass Furiosa character that we see in Mad Max Fury Road.
Kind of turns into like a revenge story by the end of it, which is pretty similar to the first Mad Max movie. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this movie. I don't think it's as good as Fury Road.
Okay.
It's a bit on the longer side, but again, it's got just really visually stunning, really good stunts. There's a really, really cool action scene which involves gliders and other like vehicles, like the really classic just vehicle
just a
mayhem.
bunch of jalopies strapped together, just ramming into each other with people flying all over the place. Yeah, it's pretty typical of the action you would see in a Mad Max Fury Road. Maybe a little bit more visual effects heavy, but honestly not all that noticeable until the end, where they just show clips from Fury Road, and then you can see the difference, which may be a mistake on the movie maker's part, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I'm not sure if this one, I was chatting with a friend about this, is because Fury Road was shot on film, and this one was shot digitally. So my big criticism of this movie is that the CGI is a lot more noticeable in this movie. Like, really much more noticeable. I don't think it takes away too much from the movie itself. It's just a lot more noticeable, and you kind of can't really help that, especially given how troubled the production of Fury Road was. Just shooting digital, it's just easier. It just saves a lot of time. Like, after I watched Furiosa, I revisited the original trilogy of Mad Max.
Yep.
And there's also a really good documentary about Australian new wave cinema called Not Quite Hollywood.
Okay.
And it just talks a lot about the like Australian genre film boom in the 70s and 80s.
The Ozploitation era.
Yeah, Ozploitation, yeah. And again, we were quite innovative back then, because there was a lull in the 60s because just American production was just too big. And nobody was taking us seriously. And there's also like a lot of censorship back then as well. But it was when Gough Whitlam and another guy that got voted into the office, and they were supporters of the arts sector. So they gave a lot of support to the community. Not like these days where if you want to make a movie, you're pretty much working for free most of the time.
Yeah.
You might get a packet of peanuts, but other than that,
that's why all the creatives are working on maths, Harvey.
Yeah, that's
getting
why.
their soul sucked out by reality television.
We just get our soul sucked out by maths and travel guides. Bunch of. I'll talk about that show another time. But But there was a time where it was quite exciting. But
and George Miller was very much at the forefront of cinema, right? Like the first Mad Max movie had a budget of $350,000-ish, and made like $100 million or something, which is a pretty crazy turnover.
Especially for like a pretty violent, high-impact movie as well.
But yeah, I mean, like the production of that was just a massive shit show as well. You know, like they're doing it on the cheap, so, you know, regulations are not really being followed. Everything seems super dangerous.
You know, so it's a tough call, because I am an advocate for keeping your actors and your extras safe. You know, you don't want people to be injured. And back then, it was a wild west of filmmaking where people were just setting themselves on fire and just crashing through shit. And when you watch those movies and those stunts, there was no CGI. Like, they couldn't afford it.
That's right.
So it was all done for real.
Yeah.
And it was just
in like outback streets as well. Not even outback streets, like, you know, semi-urban environments.
Yeah. I feel like I would like to cover some of those movies at some point because there's a bunch of them that are just on Amazon Prime, which I have a Prime account. Thanks, Bezos. Even though I do feel a little bit guilty about it, but yeah, it works for me.
Yeah, how else are you going to watch Fallout?
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, with Furiosa, I think when you do a lot of digital stuff, it does kind of lose its charm a little bit, but also the other part of me is like, yeah, like people were safe. No one died on this set. No one was severely hurt on this set. And so I think that's a pretty good compromise. So
yeah, I think the end product is quite good. Like compared to modern action films, compared to something like an Atlas, is fucking they're worlds apart, right?
They're worlds apart. There's so much personality in this movie.
I think the main thing is like it is being compared to Fury Road a lot, and I don't know if that's a very fair comparison because Mad Max movies, they're all different from each other.
Yeah, they really are, especially the original trilogy.
Yeah. You were saying before that this franchise has had the same kind of trajectory as the Evil Dead franchise in that the first one is very much like a test for the future movies. And like as each movie comes out, like it almost evolves into like a totally different entity. Like you've got the original test one, then you've got the second one, which is a bit more serious, and then you've got the third camp one in Thunderdome.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the first one is leagues different from what we have now. It is not even a post-apocalyptic world. It's basically an exploitation film.
It feels like the post-apocalyptic thing was very much an afterthought.
Yeah, well, the second one really just like, this is definitively, it becomes a wasteland. And yeah, I really like the second Mad Max movie. It's great.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It has what we see today in like Furiosa and Fury Road, but maybe a little bit more restraints because they didn't have that much of a budget. And there's this slight exploitation feel to it that I quite enjoy.
Right. When people get hit by trucks, like their bug eyes come out.
Yeah.
Just
And
that's fun.
Yeah, it's really funny. And just some of the scenes involving the gangs, like terrorizing people, it's kind of hard to watch, which I really enjoy. And I think maybe Fury Road actually kind of loses that a little bit. When I watched Fury Road a while back, like when I first saw it in theaters like 9 years ago, I didn't really like it that much. I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. I think.
Did you watch it in theaters or?
Yeah, I watched it in theaters.
Okay.
I think it's because I was a much younger guy back then, and I was still kind of cultivating my movie tastes. And I think this was just the year after John Wick had come out as well, and The Raid had come out like a few years before. So then when I saw reviews of this movie, like, oh, Fury Road is this ultra violence, like rip-roaring, high octanes, like, ooh, ultra violence. I like a little bit of the ultra violence. And it is a violent movie, but it's not like, it wasn't anything like I had seen in like The Raid.
Yeah, it's a bit more Hollywood than those examples.
Yeah, a bit more Hollywood. But upon a reevaluation, when I rewatched it, I thought I loved Fury Road.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's really good. It's a really good
amazing
movie.
Feat of action cinema. And just cinema in general, like, you know, all the in-camera effects. I mean, it's still very much visual effects assisted,
but it's hidden really well though. Like I didn't notice until George Miller actually said, "Well, we did use CGI." He's like, "Well, you could have fooled me, man." Like, yeah, good on you, man.
Yeah, but I think Furiosa, it's very different to Fury Road. Like it's a bit more
character driven.
It's got a more conventional structure, and like character arcs. It ebbs and flows a lot more and has a bit more drama than Fury Road's like non-stop action. And it also dives deeper into the lore of the Mad Max world, which, I mean, like, it's the same kind of vibe that I had with the Fallout series, I think. It's like, when I was watching Fury Road, or any of the Mad Max movies, really, I would be I was thinking like, man, this is such a weird world. I wonder what other weird stuff is going on in this world. Like those weird crow-looking guys on stilts in Fury Road. Like, what's their deal? You know, and like the green place, it's so mysterious. You know, I wonder what that place kind of looks like. But in Furiosa, because we spend so much time in this area and traveling around like the area between Gastown and Bullet Farm and the green place, it kind of makes the world feel a bit smaller. Like, we haven't really talked about him, but the main villain of this piece is a guy named Dementus, right? Who is played very well, I think, by Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Dementus. I think he was having a lot of fun with this role. Yeah.
So his crew is kind of like this nomadic crew of bikers. They're just riding around, really, and looking for a place of abundance. And they happen to stumble onto a war boy, and then they go to the Citadel. Like, it feels like everything is really close to each other. You know what I mean? Whereas before, it kind of felt like everything was like hidden, you know, and like you don't really know so much about the world. But because this is a prequel and we see a lot of the same characters reappearing, like Immortan Joe is there, Bullet Farmer and the People Eater are there as well. You know, it just feels like, I don't know, in learning more about them and learning more about like this surrounding environment, it made kind of the world of Mad Max feel a bit smaller to me.
Yeah. Well, they probably just had to, just for plot's sake.
Yeah, definitely.
Sake.
I think it serves the story well, and it serves Furiosa's story well, but I just don't, I feel like maybe it didn't serve the Mad Max world as well. I feel like, man, again, this is just a personal preference of mine, but maybe I would have preferred the mystery a bit more.
Yeah. No, I don't think I really had an issue with that. I think going on the topic of it being compared to Fury Road a lot, it's different, but I think the comparison is there because the elements that are introduced are not too different from what you've seen in Fury Road.
You mean the action?
No, just the characters and the worlds themselves. Because you see war boys in the Fury Road, right?
Yeah.
Because in the original trilogy, the first one is just Australia and bikers. Then the second one introduces the world of Mad Max with like gangs and whatnot. And then the third one, which is basically Steven Spielberg's Mad Max, introduces, you know, Bartertown and basically those Lost Boy characters.
The idea of an economy and entertainment. Like, what would these raiders do for entertainment? They do a Thunderdome, I guess, and do weird trapeze fights, which kind of like, you know, I think like some elements from Fury Road and Furiosa carry on from Thunderdome, like all the bouncing around and stuff.
Yeah. But with this one, we kind of see just the introduction of Dementus and his gang, which they're fun to watch, but they're just very similar to the other guy. Yeah.
Maybe that's my issue, Tavi. I think maybe because Fury Road introduced Immortan Joe and War Boys, and like that's such a unique aesthetic for like a gang of raiders, right? Something that we hadn't seen before. But Furiosa doesn't really introduce anything new. Like Dementus's gang are pretty generic when you think of like raiders
of a Mad Max universe. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, what could their weird aesthetic have been? You know, what would they be into? Like, even if it was like a Thunderdome situation, I would have been pretty into that.
Yeah.
You know,
it's I guess this might have been like a studio decision as well, but I guess we should talk about Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa. I quite enjoyed her as Furiosa. She doesn't emote as much, but I think her character is fun to watch. I believe her journey. I think she can be quite like badass, but she's not like a superwoman. She's not unstoppable.
Yeah,
definitely not unstoppable.
Yeah, she's pretty good at the action, even though she's built like a twig, you know.
Yeah. I quite like Anya Taylor-Joy as an actress as well. She picks interesting roles.
And they managed to find a pair of goggles that fit over her eyes, so that's good.
Yeah. Okay, no. But I mean, she's obviously done the Paycheck movie, which is like, what was that movie? Super Mario Brothers.
Sure.
Yeah.
X-Men?
But she probably got to pay a lot.
That X-Men movie she was in.
Dune 2.
Yeah.
Even though I love that movie, but she was in it for 10 seconds. She's like, I want to spend more time in the sand. I'm going to go and just spend time in Fury Road, which I guess the two big blockbusters this year have involved a lot of sand. So that must be the
aesthetic of the year. Sandy, dusty.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I agree. She's good.
Yeah.
We get young Furiosa as well, who is also quite good.
She kind of is in it for a good 30 minutes of the movie, I reckon. You don't really see Anya Taylor-Joy that much. But I don't think they were really focused on like whether or not you see the actress. It's the story, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
What doesn't really get said enough about this universe and this series? I really like the dialogue and the acting in these series.
Yeah.
It's very theatric. Like it's not
like Shakespeare, but it's dirty and Australian.
Well, I said this movie is basically Fast and Furious for like art house play aficionados.
Yeah.
Because I just love the way everyone talks.
Yeah.
In this movie.
Yeah, there's some great lines from Chris Hemsworth.
Where are you going? So full of hope. No, that's in the trailer.
I find them in
awesome.
contempt.
It's just really, it's really fun to hear. And I think that's something that I didn't appreciate from Fury Road when I first watched it. I thought it was just it was probably just a bit weird for me back then. Because I wouldn't say it's cool dialogue.
It's just weird. It's delightfully weird. It's weird, though, I would say.
Yeah. But like, upon these days, like I enjoy like wankier stuff, you know. And yeah, it's weird, you know. This is the personality. Like you're not going to hear this kind of dialogue in Atlas, you know.
Yeah.
But it's just very. It kind of makes sense because if you think about a post-apocalyptic Australia. And the amount of probably like drugs that people are going to do at some point when everything collapses. I almost feel like this is a pretty accurate representation of what would happen.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a lot of rev heads driving cars around and doing burnouts and terrorizing people.
We're not that far off, Tavi, I would say.
This is
certain parts of Australia more so than others, but yeah.
I would say this is a pretty apt representation of post-apocalyptic Australia.
Well, yeah, apparently Chris Hemsworth modeled his accent off his grandfather, so you know it's pretty authentic stuff. I think like that element of the movie, like the personality that George Miller brings to these movies really helps a lot. Not just the dialogue, but also like, you know, some of like his little camera things that he does, like there's a lot of like crash zooms on faces through windshields.
Yeah, I mean in the second Mad Max, that really classic like bug eye. And it looks quite confronting. It looks really graphic. It's such a simple thing. Where it's just showing a guy go bug-eyed before he gets hit by a car. It's not gory. It's just like kind of scary in its own sense.
It's a bit Evil Dead.
I really like it. Yeah.
The sound design as well is really good. I would say there's a bit of a lack of music in Furiosa. Again, I am comparing
there's no metal
to
guy,
Fury Road, where it was just non-stop noise. But in this movie, I think they scaled it back a bit. Which, I did notice it during one of the truck scenes. I'm like, oh, where's the music at for this?
Yeah. Well, I generally really enjoy the sound design in Mad Max movies, just the revving of engines. Because usually for me, I don't really like movies that are centered around a car chase. I prefer like, I'm going to be like an older snobby guy again, but I prefer like the sounds of engines and cars from like the older movies. Like, you know, the Steve McQueen movies and maybe French Connection. Just it feels a bit more raw. Whereas, you know, I mean, I rag on Fast and Furious a lot, but that kind of just seems a bit
you don't like that
too over the top. Yeah. I just like the rawness of the sound of these cars, which makes sense because they're basically old vehicles.
Yes.
And I really do like the aesthetic design of the cars as well. They just like look really cool. But I'm not sure if it was just me, but I noticed that the sound design, it wasn't as loud as I thought it was going to be. Is this just me?
No, that might be the lack of music though, Tavi. Don't you think?
Yeah, it's like I felt like the crashes and stuff did not really impact me as much as I was expecting it to.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to compare it to, let's say, Top Gun Maverick.
Right.
Where you first see like Tom Cruise, or you first see a jet fly off. You can really feel it. You know, you can feel the sound in your chair, and you can really feel the vibrations. That's the cinema experience. But I didn't really feel it as much. And again, going back to Civil War, where there's a couple of those scenes where you hear gunshots, you flinch because it's quite confronting and high impact. So I think the sound design is really good at selling it in the world. But in the cinema, because I watched this on extreme screen, because you got to watch this on a big screen. I didn't feel the sound design as much as I was expecting to. But the mate I watched it with, he said, no, it's pretty loud movie. So I'm not sure if that's just
you could be right.
me being desensitized.
I didn't find it overly loud. Fury Road is loud to the point where it's almost exhausting. Whereas I didn't feel as exhausted coming out of this film.
Yeah, because I think just because there's just a lot of sound design going on, it might not be possible to have those bits of really loud, because there's not enough contrast. So it probably kind of just blends in. So maybe that is so maybe that is just, I don't know, just the human body's experience of acclimatizing to a situation. So I wouldn't say that's a fault of the movie, because I think the sound design is really good. It's something I noticed that I just didn't feel it as much in this movie.
Maybe you're going deaf, Tavi. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, maybe I'm going deaf. Yeah, maybe I'm just becoming old.
You're going blind and you're going deaf.
Going blind and going deaf, yeah.
You're at the end of your half-life, Tavi.
Well, I like to have Furiosa. They kind of brought back the exploitation side of things a little bit more, which I thought was lacking in Fury Road when I was talking about the lack of gory violence, or even a lack of darkness.
Sure.
Even though, you do see Rosie Huntington-Whiteley get hit by a car and she's pregnant. It was just that's fine. I didn't really feel it that much, though.
I think because of the pace of Fury Road, you don't have much time for despair, whereas Furiosa is paced in such a way where, there are really dramatic moments and parts where oh man, I can't believe this is happening to these characters. Yeah. So you get to feel it a bit more. Yeah.
There's a scene where it's not a long scene, but it involves cannibals or something, and just cut up, strung up body parts. And that's pretty cool. It's bringing it back to what maybe the Road Warrior did, and then there's a little bit more impact with some of the deaths as well.
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah. And obviously, I don't think this is a spoiler. She eventually has to cut her arm off because, she doesn't have an arm in Fury Road. So you don't really see it, but it's it's still, the aftermath of it is still pretty graphic from what I was used to. And I think upon revisiting the original trilogy, I just remember that, the first one is pretty violent, even though you don't see as much. The implied violence is really heavy, especially when it involves the death of Max's wife and his kid. It's just whew.
You see, it's quite grisly.
Yeah. And even the bit where the guys just ride over his arm, it's again, it's not gory, but it's just a little that little cutaway. It's oh, and it's ah. Yeah, but it's cool.
Why? So this movie is not performing very well in the box office. I think it's the lowest opening for a Memorial Day opening in 41 years.
Yeah.
Despite it receiving a 7-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. Why do you think people aren't watching this movie, Tavi?
It's hard because Fury Road didn't do that well either. True. And it is a big risk to sell a movie that doesn't have the franchise protagonist in it, except for that one cameo. Yeah. But it's hard, and it's also because the movie is about Furiosa, and she is by definition a strong female lead, right? And because Disney has ran that, trope into the ground.
Oh, you think this is a sexism thing?
A little bit of that. I think some of it is that. So people are not interested generally in watching an action film that has a female lead, which I think it's stupid as well, because there's a little bit of a celebration of its failure online, which I've noticed. And I'm like, why? Like, shouldn't you try to prop up a movie that has done this trope well, you know? Because again, I think you're talking about, because there's going to be another, well, probably not now, depending on how Furiosa does. But to secure the budget for this movie, I'd imagine Warner Brothers was like, well, what's trending, or what seemed to be trending when it was pitched, was the strong female lead, right? So you have to make it about Furiosa. And I think George Miller had always wanted to do a Furiosa prequel.
Apparently he wanted to film them back to back with Charlize Theron as the lead. So it's something that's been in the works for a while.
It's, again, another troubled production. But I think they just didn't want to give him that much money. And even though maybe I'm not sure if this was a good marketing decision, considering the culture wars and the film climate these days. But I will have to give Warner Brothers credit that, they're putting a lot of money into a franchise that is not really that strong, because it's a little bit weird. Like, people like the Fast and Furious stuff because there's like kind of a comfortable like genericness to those movies. But there are like some people on YouTube who are saying like, I watched Furiosa and it's quite good, you know. But there's just a bunch of people that are kind of just dunking on the Hollywood failure, and because it's just basically their brand. And I get, you know, dunking on Hollywood, and I get dunking on Disney, because sometimes it's just fun to do, because sometimes Hollywood just makes bad decisions. Atlas or the Marvels, you know. For example, like She-Hulk is the worst TV show that I've never seen and never will watch. But I mean, when Hollywood does something that is good, I think you should at least try to support it or try and go watch it. Like, why are people saying this is good rather than just saying, it's failing because people are sick of like woke movies? But this is not a woke movie at all. And George Miller had already done because Fury Road is arguably Furiosa's story more than Max. So, and that's a good movie. It shouldn't be judged on the merit whether or not it's just based on a woman being the lead, which is stupid, because some people in that like demographic say, oh, well, you know, if you make the movie good, like they always go to like Terminator 2 and Aliens. And yes, they're great movies. But I think to a point these days, it's just that like Echo Chamber, they just hate women. Like, you can't do anything about it. If there's a movie with a strong female lead that is shit and that is like a pandering, you know, bit of garbage, like, I mean, whether or not it deserves dunking on, that's up to them. You have a right to do it. And they have a right to dunk on this movie. But like, why don't you want to try to support something that is, you know, that is good? When Hollywood does something good, like, show up to it. Or even when Disney does something good, like, Disney's capable of making good things, you know? Like, show up to it. Like, don't just sit there, just dunk. Like, give them a chance as well.
Unfortunately, Tavi, that's not how the internet works. I think
that is not how the internet works. The internet is a Mad Max wasteland in itself.
It's worse, Tavi. You're right. Like, I think it's just the fact of the matter is hate sells on the internet, and you know,
it's unfortunate.
Haters gonna hate. I hadn't even seen any of that, to be honest. The only reviews that I'd seen about Furiosa before watching it were that, it's good, but it's not as good as Fury Road. And to me, I was like, do I really want to go to the cinemas to watch something that's good, but not as good as Fury Road? Because I didn't watch Fury Road at the cinemas, and I still enjoyed it very much. You know, so like, to me, this was probably something that could have waited for streaming. But then you reminded me that it is Australian, so we could have turned it into content. So, so that put me over the line, to be honest.
I see. Ava had to get you to drag your ass, and I think you've just illustrated another issue into why it was probably failing. It's because people aren't really going to the cinema these days, and it's not just Fury Road. Fall Guy didn't do very well either.
This is a post-COVID situation. I think just the world has changed. You know, people aren't spending as much money on this kind of stuff anymore. And Fury Road, like you said, didn't do that well in the box office, but it grew over time on streaming. So I feel like Furiosa might have the same treatment.
I hope so.
Which will probably lead eventually to another Mad Max sequel. Which is actually what I want to see, is a sequel.
I want to see a Mad Max. Yeah. Like I can understand why people would be disappointed that I want to see Max. He's not the deepest character, but he's a cool character. He's an anti-hero, and people love anti-hero.
It's not that I want to see Max, it's just I want to move forward rather than backward, you know? Like,
that's true.
I don't think we needed to see Furiosa's backstory, to be honest. I think, you know, for me anyway, a lot of the appeal of that character is that we don't know that much about her. We don't even know how she lost her arm. It's just cool that she has a mechanical arm. You know what I mean? But here, in this movie, we get to see it all unfold. And I'm like,
I guess, I think you make a pretty good point there. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I was going to say, like on the cost-effective sense, for me, I don't find going to the cinema that expensive. This might be just in the area that I live, and because I have memberships of like these cinemas, you know, like I have a Hoyts membership, and I have a Palace and and you can save a lot of money going to the cinema if you're smart about it.
But it's a priorities thing, Tavi. Like you are a filmmaker by profession, so of course you're gonna put money aside to watch movies, you know. Yeah. But not everybody kind of has that, you know, luxury, I guess. I mean, not luxury. I don't want to say that you've got a lot of privilege, Tavi. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not always people's priority to go to the movies.
But they'll spend like $100 on a million different streaming services.
That's right. And that's the thing. Like, TV has evolved to, it's just streaming now. So if you want to watch TV, you have to invest in streaming services.
Yeah.
And because like all of the theatrical releases, they get put on streaming pretty quickly. You know, people are just waiting. And I mean, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do.
You're losing so much from not going to this. Because like everyone's fucking anxious these days. Because you know how everyone's got like a mental disorder now and they just don't want to go out. And like, I mean, like clubbing.
Can you blame them when Mad Max is just happening outside their window, Tavi? It's happening right now as we speak.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think you are losing a lot not going to the cinema.
Yeah, definitely. If you are going to go to the movies to watch something, this is the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Like I was tossing up between this and Planet of the Apes, but I'm pretty glad I chose Furiosa. And it's a really good movie. Like if you're comparing it to action movies in general, it's really good.
Yeah, it's long, but it doesn't feel that long. I think it's paced quite well. There's a little bit of a lull at the start, I will admit.
Well, the opening sequence I found really, really good. But yeah, I see what you mean. But like, I like that you get to see more like Australian stuff. Like it's a pretty Australian movie. You get to see like John Howard is from Sea Change. He's playing the people eater. Angus Sampson is there. One half of the Umbilical Brothers plays a character called Smeg. That's a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I didn't really realize that. I just saw I love the character names in this universe, man. There's so much fun. There's so much creativity going on, and kind of I would say Aussie humor. I mean, the guy's name is Smeg. For fuck's sake. You know, there's something that's quite tongue in cheek about this crude humor, because I would consider the Mad Max films themselves like quite a highbrow piece of entertainment. Even though you think about it, they're pretty simple movies. There's nothing that is like, you're not going to really ponder life's questions about it.
Yeah.
But it's just really, they're just really fun.
I think it's just George Miller's like style as well that he puts into it that kind of elevates it. And you know, you've got Chris Hemsworth in there. He's chewing up a lot of scenery.
Yeah,
that's fun.
He's got the things like strapped to his nipples and like rips his nipples off, and he's just like, so just cause he wants to.
Love
it's
it.
funny. Yeah,
his best role by far.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
By
he
like a
really,
long margin.
He really went all out. Yeah.
And it's a shame that people aren't really going to the cinemas for it. But you know,
I hope, because there's definitely been some big YouTubers who now have actually said it's a really good movie. I know like Charlie Moist Critical just said like, yeah, go watch Furiosa, and he's got like a pretty big audience. So I hope that like with his influence, he can be people. Oh, actually, I should go check this movie out. Not just wait until streaming because you're losing a lot just waiting for streaming.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, I was watching this video the other day about why Netflix movies look a certain way. Because you know how I always complain about like the shot reverse shot and the mid close ups.
Yeah.
It's because like most people watch movies on their phones these days, and most movies are relegated to content. And then because if there's too much like production design, it confuses people, which I find like stupid because like why? But you also have to consider, oh, how am I going to make a TikTok out of it? And I just like, it made me die a little bit inside because I appreciate streaming, but it's also streaming has killed some creators. Like Alex Garland got like fucked after Ex Machina, I reckon.
Yeah.
Just his shit getting relegated to screens. Yeah.
Well,
it's not good.
It is what it is. You got to evolve sometimes, Tavi.
It's not evolving though. It's devolving. It's not evolving at all. People are getting dumber, just waiting and just the idea of forcing yourself into a theater and not being able to pause and just do whatever you want for a bit to come back plays a big element because you lose momentum of the story, And I think people are just a bit afraid to go watch something and not enjoy it because you're not going to enjoy everything that you do. And yeah, sure, like losing 2 hours is maybe a bit of time, but also that's kind of just life. You can't enjoy everything. I've definitely gone to the cinema and like watched something and be like, when is this going to finish? But you kind of stick it through. You might enjoy it later or you might not. So I don't know. It's just unfortunate that people will see 2.5 hours and it's just I don't know. Thinking out loud.
I get it. I get it. It is a bit of a shame, but that said, like it doing well on streaming is also not the end of the world. I think as long as people are watching it in some capacity, it is what it is. But shall we do a little bit of spoilers for this movie?
Yeah, sure. I really like the fate of Dementus.
Oh, yeah. It turns into a tree.
I was a little bit underwhelmed by the climax of this movie at first because they had basically shown their coolest action scene in the middle of the movie when Furiosa becomes friends with the guy.
The guy that's not Mad Max.
Talked about. The guy that's not Mad Max, but is trying to be Mad Max. Yeah. That scene was really cool. And there's another pretty cool scene where it's in Bullet Town and they're trying to fight off the gang there.
It's a lot of sniping in this movie.
Yeah, there is a fair bit of sniping.
I quite enjoyed all the sniping elements. Like I really like the opening scene where Furiosa's mum is trying to chase down the gang that has kidnapped Furiosa. I found that really enjoyable. Her being a real badass,
Yeah, it's fun, yeah. I enjoy Dementus kind of being a guy that is really willing to just sacrifice his own people so he can survive.
He's just a bad bloke.
He's just a bad bloke, yeah.
He's just really greedy as well. He just wants like more and more, but it gets to the point where like the amount of power he gets is not equivalent to the amount of skill he possesses.
Yeah. Because he's kind of like a bit of a bumbling fool. Yeah. Like, because it's Chris Hemsworth. He's like super tank and stuff, but he's a bit of an idiot in this movie.
He rocks up to the Citadel like all cocky. He's like, we're gonna come kill you guys, and then they're like, actually,
nah.
No.
The Wolf Boys. Yeah,
and it doesn't go his way at all.
Yeah, but there's a scene where they kind of introduce the war, but it's kind of like they kind of duke him because they're going to storm the Citadel, but then Furiosa, who has escaped after she's been caught by them, she cuts her arm off. And then she like warns Immortan Joe that no, he wants you guys to leave. So he's like, we'll make them think that we're leaving. And then they do that. But then that doesn't really become into anything except like a war scene montage.
Yeah, I think it goes to explain why Dementus lost that battle. But yeah, you're right. Like the battle, you don't actually see the battle itself.
Yeah.
It's kind of told over narration.
Yeah.
Right? Which, yeah, I guess it's a bit underwhelming. But I feel like we'd seen so much action prior to that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think they had probably shot it, but it was like a pacing issue. But then the scene, because Furiosa, eventually she gets her metal arm, and then she goes after Dementus. But when she goes after Dementus, it's only like 4 guys, and then he tries to duke her by like sending like a couple other guys different ways.
Yeah, he gives the umbilical brother his robe.
yeah. And then the other guy just
Why
gets
would you
knocked
agree
up.
to wear it? Well, you know, I guess they're pretty loyal.
Yeah, this is weird because they kind of don't like him as well, but like they're pretty loyal to him. But then like his right hand man just gets like mobbed by a bunch of cannibals, and then, which is funny.
You know what confused me though, Tavi? So you know at the start, when Furiosa gets kidnapped, and then her mum and another woman go after her.
Yeah.
So that other woman is played by Chris Hemsworth's wife.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That lady from Fast and the Furious, Elsa Pataki.
Uh-huh.
Right? So, because I've seen Fast and Furious a lot, she's
yeah.
pretty recognizable to me, right?
Okay, yeah.
But then she plays another character later on in the film.
Oh, really?
Who is one of Dementus's gang members. And she's kind of like just in the background. So she's first introduced in a scene where Dementus has like cornered a rival gang, and they've like strung up the leader between these 5 bikes. And then he's like, you're going to have to fight for your position in my crew. So she's one of the characters that makes it onto her crew by like jumping on one of those bikes, right?
Oh, so she's the one that wins, right?
Yeah, she's like kind of like facially scarred.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then she makes it all the way to the end of the film. In the scene where Furiosa is going after Dementus for that final time.
Yeah.
So I thought that maybe like these characters were the same character, and that this lady has kind of come from the green place, you know, after Furiosa's mum didn't return. Maybe she went after Furiosa as well, and then just got caught up in this, in Dementus's gang, just for survival. Or even maybe like she was going deep undercover to help Furiosa in the end. But no, it's just 2 different characters. And I found it a bit distracting, to be honest.
I have a feeling it was a case of, and if this movie was shot during COVID, it's like, oh, we've lost our actor. Oh, okay. Let me see if my wife can come back. We just get her to do it.
Because she's in it a lot as well. She's in the background, but she's in the background a lot.
Yeah, I noticed this character, but I didn't notice that they were the same people. So that didn't really register on my sense. So yeah, I didn't know. I saw, you see that character a lot, but I didn't see her as the green place person. So
because she's the one that strings up Furiosa as well, and Furiosa escapes by severing her own arm off.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, maybe she's like secretly helping her out of it. But nah, it's just not.
It's just not. Yeah. But eventually she does just catch Chris Hemsworth. She like just knocks him out or something, like crashes. I forgot. But yeah, and then he has a big monologue, and then she turns him into a tree, which is pretty graphic. I was like, oh, that's a bit of a...
It's pretty graphic and it's pretty weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird George Millerism. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how does that work? So, like, what you're seeing is Chris Hemsworth is like in the top of this kind of cavernous mountain area, and he's nude, but he has this giant tree that is growing from him, and it's basically feeding off his nutrients. And it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, it's a bit of body horror.
Yeah, a bit of body horror. But how does that work? Like, how is she keeping him alive all that time?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not a thing that you can do to somebody.
I think it is just a George Miller-ism.
Yeah. That was the nut that she was keeping that whole time,
she just kept it, the nuts, and, growing from his nuts. So, it's... a little bit of a double entendre there.
Poetic symmetry, yes. but no, that was pretty satisfying. Satisfying end to that character, I think.
Yeah, so like I had even though we had seen a lot of action, I had expected like a bigger action scene. But with that little bit of like weird ending, I actually didn't mind it. It's like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty... It lifted the bar in a different manner. It subverted the usual Mad Max climax where it just has a big car chase. Because going back to Thunderdome, which I think is probably the worst Mad Max movie. I think it's still a good movie, but it's definitely, its tone is just super different. It is basically Peter Pan.
It's probably the one I've seen the most, though, to be honest. I think this is the one that was
really
on TV.
It's really
this
light.
Is the Beverly Hills Cop 3 of the franchise.
Yeah. That's a really perfect. It's even got like the saxophone soundtrack. But there's not much car action until the very end of the movie, where it's like, okay, that's cool. So that's the usual structure of a Mad Max movie, is that there's a massive car chase. But there is one in this one, but we'd already seen 2 really long and cool action scenes before. So yeah, George probably was just like, oh, maybe it's too much for the audience.
Maybe he used all his good ideas in that truck chase. I really like that truck chase. There's a bit in that truck chase where there's 2 guys on a motorcycle pursuing them, right?
Yeah.
And then one of them gets off and starts skiing behind the motorcycle. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
And then he pulls a parachute and starts parasailing. I'm like, oh, that's guys. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's so visually stunning. And this is one guy, one of the main guys, has got this big black butterfly thing that's on his back.
Yo, it's like a squid. It's like a giant squid.
How cool is that?
Cool. Really cool visual.
Man, that's really stunning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then he gets sucked up by the bomby knocker. Yeah.
Shout out to the little war boy that's in charge of the bomby knocker.
What's his name? It's Quaden. Do you know the story about that kid?
Yeah, so Quaden Bales. So a video of him went viral where he is a reaction to him being bullied at school.
Yeah.
And that's what caught George Miller's attention and led to his casting here. Glad he got a happy ending from that.
Yeah.
Obviously, bullying is, it's not a good thing.
But do you know the full story? It might be a bit too much, but the TLDR is he was initially bullied, and then he had people had set up a Kickstarter or something for him, I think. But then some people claimed that he was not actually a kid, but he was an adult in a kid's body with his dwarfism. So then the internet started bullying him after that. And then his mum was like, no, he's a fucking kid. You guys are ruining his life even more.
Oh, man.
So he just copped a lot of shit. So yeah, the internet is just a wasteland, man. It's a bad place.
Max.
Yeah, it's Mad Max. So I'm glad that George Miller is giving him a future, even with his Hollywood, because he was in 3,000 Years of Longing, which I haven't seen, but I saw that he's in the credits. George Miller's giving him obviously work. Apparently he still cops a little bit of bullying in high school and stuff now, which is it's sad, because I mean people are just the worst. People just love hating on things.
Just a bunch of smegs, Tavi.
But just smegs. I mean, you and I enjoy hating to a degree as well. We can't deny that. It's just our human nature. But
all of our hatred is justified, Tavi. That's
yes. All of our hating is justified. None of the other guys can claim that. Oh, dear.
Don't bully people. It's not
nice.
Don't
bully people.
Just don't do
it. Yeah. You can bully corporations, but not people.
Yeah, you can bully CEOs of corporations because they're not really people, are they?
Yeah. You can bully Bobby Kotick if you want, because no, I'm not going to get into that. That's more gay. Those are the gaming news.
But you know what you should do is you should watch Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, because it's a good movie, I reckon, and probably even better in cinemas. Yeah,
most definitely. Go watch it. You should support when Hollywood is doing something different, and even if it was company men decision and executives, I think George Miller has done a good job showing his vision and compromising, but also doing something that he wants to do, rather than watching a movie like Atlas, where it is the most generic piece of shit, and then you have to have the actors can't talk smack about it, and then they have to go on this fucking tour where they say, I really tried to bring out this side of my character, and it was not really that evil, because I think Simu Liu did a bunch of press for it. And then when I watched the movie, I'm like, I don't see anything of what you said in this role. But that's probably not his fault, because you can't just you're not going to promote say, well, actually, I think this movie is shit, but you should watch it. So I get it. If you're in the shit sandwich, you
We can't all be like Dakota Johnson.
Yes.
Cinema. That's where we're at. You get an Atlas, you get a Furiosa, and you get a Madam Web.
Yeah.
This is what we get to choose from.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm choosing, personally.
Yeah. Madam Web, right? Yeah. So that's a movie that deservedly got its reputation that it did. But I think the issue is that Furiosa is kind of getting lumped in with Madam Web, which is really unfortunate because I think Furiosa is a pretty good movie. Probably not going to be one of my favorites of the year, but I think it's a really good movie. Yeah. But I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about this film.
All right. But guys, what did you think of it? Did you like Furiosa, or were you not that into it? Let us know. You can get in touch with us at twoasianblokes@gmail.com. You can join our Facebook group to be part of the conversation, or you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at twoasianblokes to see what we're up to. Thank you for listening, as always.
Yeah, take care. We'll see you soon, as always.
We'll see you on the Fury Road. Trying to come up with a poignant Chris Hemsworth line from the movie, but I'm drawing a blank.
If you want to go see, if you want to see Mad Max in real life, you can just go somewhere in
Just go to Melton. Go to Sunman's house.
Go to Melton. Go to Melton. You can watch if you watch the Spaniard video where he goes to Melton, you can kind of understand where Mad Max would come from. It's like, oh yeah, that's actually not that far.
There's a logical progression. Yeah.
Witness me.
But seriously, don't go to Melton. All right, guys, we'll see you later.
Laters, guys.